I'm walking around Washington, D.C. right now in a little bit of a state of shock. I have the past 9 years of my life flashing before my eyes, reading the classified annex that just got declassified. I'm still only about 5 pages into it, and it's about 29 pages, but I'm already so shocked by it. I'm actually not. How do I describe it? I'm not surprised at all, and yet I'm shocked. You know that feeling? Like you're not surprised, but you're shocked? Everyone always asks me, like, how did you get into this? How do you know so much about the censorship space? Like, a lot of people studied the censorship space. What kind of made my position in it unique? And the answer was because right at the time that these emails that we're just seeing, that were in this classified annex from July 2016, that was the exact moment that I really started my journey in this, pursuing this exact beat. Everyone at the time in 2016 was focused on Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and Susan Wojcicki. And I came across some documents, military documents, DARPA documents. These were open source. They were just available online around censorship techniques. And I got very interested in the military national security dimension of censorship. And it seemed to me that nobody at the time even entertained the possibility that that was what was driving censorship. Everyone thought it was a culture war thing. Everyone thought it was a SJW, a sort of pink-haired, radical Marxist type. And I very early, right when these emails were being written, latched onto the national security aspect of it and became obsessed with it, completely, totally, hopelessly obsessed with it. And a lot of what I began writing Weapons of Mass Deletion in August 2016, which was the same month that Hillary Clinton did her first Russiagate speech. It was the month that we now know John Brennan was doing the handwritten notes saying that the CIA was aware of Hillary Clinton's plan to hatch this. And I've often asked myself, like, why all this stuff was out there? Why didn't anybody else pick it up? And I've tried to come up with so many different theories about that, and I still don't know the answer. But I have a weird feeling it's because of how boring the language is that these operations were used to dress up. The linchpin of it all was a concept called critical infrastructure. Now, nobody in their right minds would think that critical infrastructure would be a term used as the legal predicate for a government role in internet censorship. Critical infrastructure. What does that mean to most people? They think it means like dams and satellites and subsea cables. Weird, important shit to the country that you don't come across day to day. And I don't know what put me in that weird position. Maybe it was the corporate law thing. In corporate law, you're used to dealing with a bunch of bullshit terms. When you're drafting a purchase agreement, the whole game is one side's lawyers try to create these sophisticated, esoteric, defined terms that mean nothing like what you think they mean, and trying to kind of deceive the other attorney or the counterpart's lawyers about what the contract really means. So I don't know. Maybe it was that. But I saw that critical infrastructure shit right away, 2016, 2017, and I pursued it like a dog. When I broke the CISA scandal at DHS, which is what kicked off a lot of this, and helped, guide some aspects of the Twitter files around interpreting them, the critical infrastructure concept was so important, and I understand that phrase just puts you to sleep when you hear it. But what it did was, on January 6, 2017, the outgoing DHS made elections critical infrastructure. And then they said, because elections, a metaphysical concept, is critical infrastructure, then anything that damages the integrity of that critical infrastructure, those elections, is now a DHS domain legally. So tweets that undermined the integrity of the election because they contained misinformation or disinformation or malinformation could now be censored by the US government, notwithstanding the existence of a First fucking Amendment, all because of this trick, this word game, this completely deceitful concept that critical infrastructure, a term that puts 99.99% of people to sleep, gives you the legal predicate. And so I pursued every aspect of the critical infrastructure network. The CIA side, the DOD side, the FBI side, the NGO side. When DHS created their Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, a name that we have security in our name twice because we just care so much about security. No, it was because infrastructure security, they said, okay, now we can control elections. And cybersecurity, that cyber gave them the predicate to go after tweets and Facebook posts and YouTube videos and TikTok videos and Reddit posts. It gave them the legal predicate to completely burn the US Constitution. And now what do I see today? What do I see today? I see a classified annex that has been here the whole time. A late July email from the head of the Eurasia Center of the Open Society Institute. The Eurasia Center. How many times have I told you it's all about Eurasia? The whole blob game here is seize Eurasia. Eurasia, Eurasia. Everyone says, what does that matter? And lo and behold, the very email that the CIA director presented to the president and to James Comey to kick off the entire Russiagate hoax, citing Hillary Clinton's plan to frame Trump in a false flag gay-op, that Russia was going to interfere in the election. And they knew it was a lie. And they knew it because of the Eurasia Center of the Open Society Institute, of George Soros' Open Society Institute. And they sat on it. And they classified it. And what did that email from Leonard Bernardo, the head of the Seize Eurasia posse of George Soros, the biggest financier to the Democrat Party and also to, the whole wing of the blob Republicans. You can Google image of George Soros and John McCain. They look like they're making out in half the pictures. What does the email say? Now, obviously, everyone focuses. The whole thing is a bombshell. CrowdStrike, which I've talked about so much, that was going to be used as a media vehicle. That Hillary Clinton had hatched this plot that the FBI was going to pour oil on it for them. But what's right in the middle of that paragraph? I think the quote is, the goal is to make the Russia play a U.S. domestic issue. Say something like critical infrastructure is a threat to elections. It was that casual, that flippant, that cavalier. Just like that. Say something like critical infrastructure is a threat to elections. Can you appreciate the seismic implications of such a throwaway sentence? Every university in this country was twisted by Russiagate. Harvard, tens of millions of dollars to study Russian interference. U.S. Army War College, money to study military strategy in light of Russian interference. Billions of dollars to NGOs to study and conduct counter operations to Russian interference when there was none. And they knew there was none the whole time. But what was the legal predicate? Because how do you get around the First Amendment? Well, you say, well, there's a government role in protecting critical infrastructure. And that supersedes, I guess, the First Amendment right to freedom of speech. If you don't know what the fuck they mean by critical infrastructure. And the fact that they said, yeah, we need a get out of Constitution free card here. How do we gin this up? Yeah, let's say something like critical infrastructure. And just like that, all of these critical infrastructure, NGOs bloom, civil society organization, critical infrastructure bloom, the DHS critical infrastructure, FBI critical infrastructure, CIA protecting critical infrastructure. The entire apparatus of the blob now has a legal predicate, a get-out-of-jail-free card to censor you, to take down videos, to launch counterintelligence operations against U.S. citizens based on who they vote for. You know, what's amazing is there have been about a dozen times where I've been like sitting on a toilet or in the shower or staring out the window of a train, and I've thought to tweet out randomly, hey, does anyone have a link to DC Leaks? DC Leaks was the 2016, it was about August 2016. It was right in this time period. And DC Leaks were the hacked documents of George Soros' Open Society Foundation. Because this was one of the things that pushed me to begin writing the book, to leave my law career, was I saw what happened with DC Leaks. I didn't download all of them at the time, and I've tried to go back and look for them, and it's been very, very difficult. But they were incredible. They were George Soros Open Society Foundation documents, and it had everything. It had all the play around Ukraine, post-Crimea. It had all of his operations with the IMF and the World Bank. All the crap around the Secretary of State, who happened to be Hillary Clinton, mind you. And what does it turn out now that John Brennan's handwritten notes from August 3rd, 2016 reference? The DC Leaks. That's where they get the Leonard Bernardo email, the Open Society Institute Eurasia. So no wonder they censored it. That was such a crazy thing to me. When I could no longer access documents that were publicly available 1 second, and then the national security state sweeps in. I was born in 1984, child of the internet. First wave to start, using this while conscious. And I'd never seen that before. Just publicly available documents just vanish, gone from the internet. That's part of what drove me to go down this whole path. And it turns out it was that exact moment that the CIA and John Brennan knew how sensitive those leaks were, that they turn out to be the linchpin of the classified annex that we don't learn until 9 years later, after all of this Russiagate bullshit.
The river was so high.
The national security state stepped in to censor it. They knew the whole thing was bullshit from top to bottom. I can't tell you how many times in the early days, early days, 7 years ago, I was making trips to DC. I wasn't even working for an admin. And I'm trying to explain this concept of critical infrastructure. I have all these random people who I randomly network with, and they're listening, and I can tell. They're like, yeah, I wouldn't be structured like that. That phrase can't possibly mean that. It can't be that devious. You have to explain all the language, all the little language tricks. And they come up with it just like that. We'll use some bullshit like critical infrastructure. And then they ran with it. 2018, they create CISA out of that very critical infrastructure. In January 6, 2017, do you know that our election system is completely changed because of that? Our entire election system. When Jed Johnson, the outgoing DHS secretary, on January 6, 2017, the real January 6, when the CIA made the bullshit assessment and simultaneously DHS declared elections, the metaphysical fucking concept of elections, to be critical infrastructure. The same day, they federalized elections then. That was when DHS took control at a national level. Before that, since 1789, it was all state control over elections. They used that bullshit predicate, which all 50 states opposed at that time. And then they opened up a fucking slush fund to bribe states to do it. There is so much second order and third order damage from this all. This was how we lost free speech. Before COVID, the Russiagate censorship, the presence of the CIA and DOD and FBI and DHS and all their little hellspawn NGOs during Russiagate was what allowed them to be in position to censor COVID. And because the American population had been so used to the concept of, well, I guess we're censoring things now, that's what made the COVID censorship pill easier for people to swallow. That they'd already been doing it because of Russiagate, and they would have never been able to do that without this bullshit national security predicate established by the crime family of Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Comey, all the way up to Barack Obama. There has got to be a face that people look back on and say, I don't want to be like that guy because I might get indicted like him. I made this point before, but we now have a signed, sealed confession from Leonard Bernardo about this. He can be deposed by the Justice Department. He can have all of the other emails and text messages around that time subpoenaed. We have agreement and affirmative act in furtherance of the agreement. The one thing you don't have is a signed confession from John Brennan and Hillary Clinton that they knew Russia was not interfering. Now, you know that the other CIA analysts and FBI folks knew that there wasn't. They disagreed with the assessment. We now know that they were bribed, threatened, that they wouldn't get promoted unless they changed their assessment. But you don't need that confession to move forward with prosecution. They didn't do that with Trump. With Trump, the whole thing turned on his state of mind. They said Trump was guilty of a conspiracy, and his only defense is that he had an innocent state of mind. We don't have any confession from Trump, so we'll just present the evidence to the jury, and the jury will decide. Well, that's how rule of law works, right? We learned it from them. If no one's above the law, that's how the law's got to be applied now.